I'm dealing with 50 million things that you're just on an instrument, and if you're nice with your instrument, you just go off. This is different. I'd be like, look, I gotta find a drum, fit the tempo, put a bass line on that, put a saxophone from this record, find out if it's the right key, tempo, all these things, and all on a turntable and sampler. I learned in the reggae community when I learned what a producer was, right? The producer didn't play the instruments. He told the musicians what to play.
Let's be honest, you're not gonna find these videos anywhere else. Why? Because I make them. So it would really help me out if you subscribe. If you've already subscribed, what also really helps is if you like the video and leave a comment. It's hard in the era of clickbait videos on YouTube and negativity in the producer community, and I appreciate your support. Thank you so much.
I didn't even know I'm learning engineering while I'm learning how to make beats and I'm DJing. So it was like I got piece by piece all the way to we had a little 4-track. The little homies could come over that could rap. I mean, I'm a little homie at the time too. Like we just in there, just experiment. I mean, I have tapes, bro. I got tapes from me and my man. He's still nice. From like 86, 87. And what we used to do is I used to loop the sample in with the drum machine, like sync it in with the record. And what I would do is I would record a pass of that to a tape. And that tape became our master tape of the beat. And then he could do vocals and I'd do some scratches on the next take, and record that to a tape, and take that tape old school before. And then we got the 4-track and we were like, oh, now we can. So I'm learning engineering, I'm learning the whole thing. I don't even know it. I'm just thinking I'm like Jazzy Jeff or Grandmaster Flash or, you know what I mean? Like it was the same, to me it was just that. And then once I got in the game, you know, like maybe, I don't know, let's see, I got my first set really set up by like 16. Yeah, so by the time I'm 18, turning 19, I'm getting in the game for real. I'm seeing like, wow, I'm in the studio, $1 million studio, like, yo, this feels like the same concepts I'm already dealing with, you know? And so that drove me into the beats, you know, digging for records and all that stuff. I came up in that era in New York, where it was, I mean, this is probably a whole other conversation or something, but where digging in the crates was a real thing. And it was early at the Roosevelt with the, you know, everyone was there. Like that was like a who's who of the new producers at the time, you know what I mean? It was in them crates. So I really just dug into that. That led me to the beats. The beats led me to more of how do you work the SP? How do you work the S950? I started with an S950 and a broken SP12. That I had to keep speeding up the tempo for it to stay on tempo. So like at the end, I'm thinking like, why is it 100 and whatever BPMs? It's like 90.
Oh, like the slider just kept,
like
my
the
ASR
tempo
used to
would just not, it wouldn't stick. And I think, on real, I think Muggs, I think if you listen to the first Cypress Hill album, I think he was having the same problem, because if you listen to those instrumentals, they're off. Then they go off. They're not like they're on and then they go off. So I wonder.
I wondered about that because you don't realize it until you try to mix one of those records.
Exactly.
And then there's something like, up with it.
Yeah.
I know they did it to a click. So they were locked into a tempo. How is it? And it's so subtle. It's like off by just one and then it goes right back.
Yeah.
That's so weird.
Yeah. Well, like even recently we're in the studio. And we were playing a sample on Logic looped, like a 8-bar loop. And we were just pressing play by hand on the MP. And even if you hit it right on, it was off within 8, 9, 10 bars. So it goes to show that the drum machines, they doing something different than all this grid. Which honestly, I make all my beats, not really the samples, I use Logic, but I make all my beats on the MP for that reason. The timing and because even when I look at it on the grid, sometimes the snares are in different place, like it's not right on, even though it's on in succession. So yeah, I had the SP12. It had like 4 seconds or something, or like 1 second on each pad. I didn't even use it for that. I really just used it for the trigger the S950. And that was the first joint I got. And then I had this little Boss drum machine that it could keep the tempo. So I had started using that as a sequencer. Then I got in the studio to lay these beats down. Back then you had to go to the studio And once I really, at first I was in the studio just telling the engineer, yeah, loop this, loop that. My first actual studio experience, like recording, was in hip hop world famous Studio 1212 in Queens. That's where I recorded my first demo with a guy named Shah from BDP, KRS-One's crew. And he was actually, this dude was on, I don't know if you're a fan of KRS-One's productions, but he produced a Sly and Robbie album, like right around, I don't know, like 89 or something. And this dude was the main MC on it. So we had a little group that we had a little offshoot of BDP, from the BDP. We were the young dudes in BDP. I mean, I was the chrome dude. I was like the newest, youngest, go get the beer, clean up the room, and carry the bags on the bus. But my first session was out there in 1212. And that was when I really met a hip hop engineer. His name was CJ Moore. He studied under Paul C. And this was like literally right after Paul C had passed away. So like the people that knew how to really rock that SB 1200, it was like a secret code. You know what I mean? Like you didn't meet people that knew how to use it to the best of its ability. And that was when I first saw it, and I was watching them record, and I was like, wow, I'm doing this in the crib on the 4-track. Just this is, of course, a higher level. And so it all started to come together for me to be like, to me, I saw the future. I thought like, oh, all producers will be engineers and musicians in the future. Like they'll all be able to do all three things. Because I remember when I wanted to be, like graduating high school, I wanted to study engineering, and they wouldn't let me into the music schools because I didn't have an instrument. And I'd be like, I even actually have Berklee School of Music. They sent back my application because it said like, what's your instrument? And I put turntable. What's your music? What's your major music? Hip hop. They sent my application back, circled with a red pen. Hip hop. This is not music. Turntable. This is not an instrument.
Well, this is a great time because Ben actually brought up that you were doing all this stuff pre-Pro Tools, and he said ingenuity at its finest. And that's, I think, a great word, because I was having this conversation earlier with Dame. There is this sort of conflict, even now, even in the hip hop producer community, which strikes me as ironic. This whole, producers who use loops or producers who can't play instruments versus producers who are, real musicians. And you think, but this is what they used to do to us as a whole.
Exactly.
And now we're doing it to each other. So It's a weird conversation. How do you, especially you as the son of a quote unquote real traditional musician, how do you see that conflict?
Yeah, I never understood the argument, because it took some people like even my pops, right? It took him Tribe Called Quest's first album to really understand, because he was recognizing some of the loops and being like, hold up though, that's this record, that's a Gary Bartz record with the, you know what I mean? Like he would make the connection, and that's when he started to see it. And for me, I was like, yo, this is actually harder to do, because I'm dealing with 50 million things that you're just on an instrument. And if you're nice with your instrument, you just go off. This is different. I'd be like, look, I got to find a drum, fit the tempo, put a bass line on that from this record, put a saxophone from this record, find out if it's the right key, tempo, all these things, and all on a turntable and sampler. There's no shifting and all that. So I always felt like, because I learned in the reggae community when I learned what a producer was, right? The producer didn't play the instruments. He told the musicians what to play. So that really made me understand in hip hop, because people be like, he's a producer, he's a beat maker, whatever. All of it it's hip hop, right? But the producer's the one who's going to tell everyone what to play anyway. So I always felt like there's that line of like, nah, we're something special. We're musicians in a whole other way. Like producers, think about producers, they hear music especially hip hop. It's a different decipher going on in here than even a musician. Like, look how, someone say, oh, it's easy to play hip hop. I said, no, it's hard. It's really hard actually, because you're confined to the loop. You're confined to the 8 bars, 4 bars, maybe even 2 bars. Can you play a 2-bar loop as good as the loop? You know what I mean? Like, that's to me always why the Roots were ill, because That's how he looked at it to me. Quest and the bass player Hub, they just looked at it like that. Like, can you play the hell out of 2 bars for 3 minutes, 4 minutes? Because that's not that easy to do when it comes to, can you keep that groove? That's a James Brown thing, right? It's like, can you keep that groove going? Don't lose it at all. You know, so I always felt like,
and make it communicate something.
Yes.
Somehow boil it down to a 4-bar loop.
Yeah. And so I always felt like we had a different musicianship with us as far as producers in hip hop and beat makers. You know, they used to tell me it wasn't music at all. Like I used to argue and you know, I went to school in LES in Manhattan, and I used to argue with the music teacher about hip hop. You know what I mean? Like that, a constant, like the kids would be ready for the debate every couple of days because they knew it was coming, with me being like, yo, stop trying to throw these little darts at me, because you know how much, like, you know, people knew early, like I was pursuing that when it wasn't like, you know, when you had a tape, it was like, what do you mean you have a tape? Like, oh, this is my tape of me DJing or whatever, or scratching or whatever. You know what I mean? People were like, man, and then the music teacher, he's hating. Oh, that ain't music. I'm like, well, if you listen to this and that, and you understand, like, it has all the things that you would encompass in music, the hell are you talking about? You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, it was always a foolish argument, because to say that what we're doing is not music, that's like, I don't know, that's like a slap in the face to music. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're actually the ones that recycle the music and make it new and fresh again. That's always been hip hop's, you know, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, we always take the old joint and put it and make it brand new again. The ultimate recycle, I used to say. You know what I mean? Like, hip hop's the ultimate recycle, which is different because we're seeing a difference now. Like, you know, it was always there, the hip hop and rap, which is, you know, but now the divide is even worse. And it's generational now. It never was generational. I never cared how old Curtis Blow was. I knew he was old. You know what I mean? Like, I still liked the breaks. I still, you know, danced around to AJ and was like, man, Curtis Blow is the best. You know what I mean? For a little minute there. You know what I mean? So I think that, like, hip hop and rap and all this stuff is like, it's always been like this weird, like, I don't know.
And that's another ironic
rap
conversation.
is like a game, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, because it's like even if we're not sampling, so if we are sampling, and plenty of young artists are making hits off of samples that are created by undeniably old people, you know, old musicians who are all the way gray and, you know, whatever. And their new music is based on that, whether it's a J. Cole, whether it's a Lil Mosey, whoever. So already it's weird to even have a generational conflict or divide. And then on top of it, the people that are creating their own loops and their own samples, the majority of them are trying to age them to make them sound old. So how is age even a negative, right, in the world we live in? It doesn't make sense.
Facts. You know what it is, man, is that we're in this new age, and it's weird. It's like bizarro world, and sometimes, you know, like, I remember being a kid being like, I wish hip hop was on the radio every day. And then when it's got on the radio every day, about 2 years in, I was like, man, that's well, careful what you wish for. This sucks. You know?
Yeah.
So, you know, because it was funny, because I remember when Hot 97 first started, it was like, wow, this is incredible. Like, they're playing, because they were playing retro stuff too that might have been 3-4 years old. You know what I mean? Because back then it wasn't so quick as far as the turnaround. You know, you bump the Tribe Called Quest album till they drop the next one, which is usually 2 years later. You know, DMX, I think, changed that game and changing it. Because to me, that's, again, where that rap game comes in, where it's like, you do it for hip hop. We all hip hop heads. And now we're seeing a difference with some of these kids, some of the younger generation. They're not really so much hip hop heads as they could tell you a lot about rappers. You know, which is, ain't nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a hater or an old head or whatever, but, you know what I'm saying? There's a big difference. I mean, we're talking to Lil Yachty about it. Like, bro, you know, it's important about the bars, you know? Like, I know the bars don't really cash the checks, you know what I'm saying? Like, until you get to Kendrick or Black Thought, legendary, lyricism. And I think that's, like some of the beats get caught up in this now too, because I'm not a hater, but I hear a lot of people like, oh, I made this many beats in a day or a week, and then you go listen to the beats, and it's like, yeah, but that's the same drum kit, the same. I could make 50 million if I just stuck with the same. You know what I mean? I'm not hating. Like anybody's out there hustling, get your hustle on. You know what I mean? But sometimes it's a little bit like, you're in the rap game, you're into the rap game. You know what I mean? And like, I'm not. I don't want to sound like old head, you know what I'm saying? But it's like, that's why we take it so serious, because it ain't always about the check. I would get my check. I've been getting my check 30 years from this game, but I've also kept integrity and did what I wanted to do with it. And you know what I mean? Like, I've played the game as well. I try to get hits and try to mix big records, blah, blah, blah. But really, I just followed my path and let the hip hop guide me into what was next. And, I feel like there's an insurgence, but I feel like that's part of what's lost is the inspiration for hip hop and how serious we all took it in the beginning, because it was like, yo, back to what we were talking when we first started here, was the savior for a lot of us. So now these kids, not to say the hood ain't messed up, it is. It's just worse than ever, but it's different. It's a different vibration now. And yeah. I don't know. I think we went into a million topics right now, but
I'll ask some other questions. How long would you say it took you until you actually turned that passion into an actual career, and what was really that turning point? What moment defined it?
I DJed my first party ever in East New York in like '86. And just the fact that it was a family party, and just the fact that the family kept coming in and telling me what it was, I knew that by the time I got out of high school, I'd be doing something with it. And that's pretty much what happened. At 17 years old, I joined a band as the DJ. And it was funny because my pops was the bass player in the band. It was a reggae band. And so my whole senior year of high school, I was DJing this band. With this band, like they would play, and then on the breaks I would spin, and I'll do a little, talking on the mic and hyping it up. And so I started getting money doing that. I'm still living at home, so I started feeling myself. I was like dookie ropes and 3-finger rings, and So by that time, I was like already not coming to school on time. My parents was cool with it. Like, he's on his career already. So, but the real turning point for me was when I, in that reggae band, we got produced by Sidney Mills and Kevin Batchelor, who were just finished helping KRS-One make Edutainment. And they had helped him make the one before that, the Ghetto Music. So they came in to produce, and we got along amazingly quick. Like, they were just, and he literally just told me, when you graduate high school, which was in like, 2 months or something, he said, my man Kevin, KB, he said, when you graduate high school, just call me. I might have some gigs for you in the city. I was actually up in Massachusetts at the time going to school. And I called him like the next day. I got the diploma. I called him the next day, like, yo, I'm here. It's DJ Nastee. Let me know. And he called a week later and had a gig for me that I had to do an audition for it in New York. And I knew I was going to kill that audition because I had already been doing things with the band, experimenting with like, yo, can you scratch on this little 16-bar break we got? We usually put a guitar solo right here, but maybe, So I was already understanding 8-bar, 16-bar solos and, basic stuff. So I went, I killed that. It was with a group called Unity 2. I know you know music, so maybe you know Unity 2. They had a song called Shirley.
Yep.
On Warner Brothers Reprise. And basically, shout out my man Cavo. They basically gave me the first chance, and I went, crushed the audition. They said, you got to live in the city. I planned on moving in the city. I'd already lived in New York. I'd already spent my high school years there, and my high school was ending up in Massachusetts. I was like, fam, I'm here. And it was funny because that summer I got cool with KRS because they were cool with KRS-One and BDP and all of them. Kenny Parker and everybody. And by the summer, I was on Yo MTV Raps when they did the voters for rappers for voters registration, and I was on. I didn't even want to I was just like, I'm here, and Harmony, who was DJing for at the time, like pulled me into this interview, and it's like, unbeknownst to me, it's the wrap up of the Yo MTV Raps that week or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm on TV, everyone sees me. It's back before social media, so everyone watched Yo MTV Raps. If you listen to hip hop, and that was the social media aspect of it, you watched that, and then the next day, you said to your friends, you saw this person video, you heard this song, yo, what do you think about this? And I was on that show. And that's like 4 months in the actual like game, getting paid, showing up, sound checks, this, that, photo shoots. And it was a beautiful moment and an awakening moment, because here I am on TV. I go back around the way, and my people are like, "Where's your car? Where's your this? Where's your that?" We see you on MTV, not even TV. We see you on MTV. Like, where's the bread? And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, I'm staying on somebody's couch to make this dream happen. You know what I mean? I'm like 18 years old, barely got out of high school on some like, okay, I'm already doing my dream. Forget that, high school's out of here. You know what I'm saying? So it was right around so that's like, I guess that's the summer of 1990. I'm an old man, you know what I'm saying?
Well, I want to pick up on that, because that's another part of the private conversation we had, just talking about how people just kind of equate these moments with long-term success. Like, for example, a plaque. I've heard that there are whispers that I've, like a millionaire or something, because of course I got a plaque. Like, that's what happens. Right. When you're on the #1 album, you're a millionaire. When you're on MTV, right, you're a millionaire. Where are your millions of dollars? In your experience, can we equate fame or plaques or accolades with financial success?
Nah, they're not hand in hand at all. Then, like, if you're a hustler, you can make something happen. But at that moment, it was for me, when everyone's saying, "Where's your car?" or whatever. It's like, wow, fame does not equal money. And I grew to know that throughout my whole journey, that I would meet cats that were hella famous and didn't even own their own house, and I'm talking about famous, like the #1 rapper even, you know what I mean? So yeah, it definitely does not coincide necessarily. It can, if you're, like I said, if you're a hustler and you get famous, you should be able to generate off that fame. But if you're just a fool and want to be famous, man, there's a lot of people that are going to help you get there. If you could be that famous person, because if they know the game and you don't, they're the ones going to get paid. And that's usually how this game is. If you're not, like the plaques, people say that to me too, like, "Oh, Big Pun, you must still be getting money off that." I'm like, yo, I was the engineer, fam. And while my role was not diminishing, I'm not diminishing my role in any way. There's no check for that after. That was a check for work for hire. And as beautiful as the plaque is, it wasn't what I was striving to get while I was making the music, and being in the studio, gritting it out with the artists, especially back then, there was no Pro Tools. When we talk about a classic record, we're talking about a lot of work, a lot of work. So yeah, a lot of people take the glam and glitz part, which for us is the plaques and awards. And, like, honestly, I didn't really go after none of the plaques. People have been telling me to go after the plaques of like, yo, fam, like you really like made a lot of moves, being like one of the first major hip hop engineers, like me and Duro kind of, not to say we were the first, but we were the first to kind of be in the game. Like, yo, this is what we do. We do hip hop.
In the sense that, and then especially you had a name. I mean, we would hear your names on the records, especially when Duro got with like Mace and Desert Storm, right, and all that.
Yeah. He became their guy. And hip hop engineering is different than any other engineering. You know what I mean? Like, it takes a different mentality and a different ear. You know, so when I was doing all this stuff and I was getting, you know, like the cool thing is that a lot of the stuff that I've done in my career, most of it is it, not that it came to me, like I just sat around and nothing, you know, and just all these things came to me. But like, for instance, a Mobb Deep mix of a classic record. One, I'm not thinking about a classic record when I'm mixing it. I want it to be, of course, who doesn't? But they came to me and wanted me to mix that and was like, we need what you're doing on this to come in and do that here. That to me, man, it means more to say to someone that than that it's a platinum record like that. Because I mixed a lot of cool records that I could tell you like, yo, oh, we were in the studio doing this and then we was like that. And then it's like, what record is that though? For some people, you know what I mean? Like if it's not a well-known thing, it's kind of like, you know.
Well, let's talk about that because Quiet Storm is undeniably a classic record. And
that's me from making the beat to recording the vocals to mixing the record and doing that whole intro that everyone, you know, it's a very memorable intro. You know, when people introduce me to someone, they usually say, he made the part of a record that you will remember for the rest of your life. And then when they tell them like, yeah, Quiet Storm, because it was all me, you know, and that was why they called me in. And to me, that is the beauty in it. I'm glad we got platinum. I was so glad to see those guys just go up and up and up. You know, whenever I see my brethren from the hood just make it, it was always just, and to know that I was helping and I was becoming this guy that was like a go-to for hip hop. Like people would pay me just to come in and arrange the record. Cause back then the music would be on a tape and it'd be on different tracks, the bass line, just like, you know, in a session. So, but mostly they're just loops going and you're using the mute buttons to turn them on and off. That's how you're going to put the sax in on the horn. And in reggae, we did it live to tape. You know what I mean? It'll be the two of us at a board. All right, you got the drums and the bass. I got the synthesizers, melody, and the vocals over here. You know what I mean? Like we mix it all live. I know some guys look at me like, what do you mean mix it live? Like, no, literally what you're hearing is a performance at the board. You know, and I got known for doing that in one take. You wouldn't be standing there for hours with me trying to, you know, just do it live to a tape. I mean, obviously at the top level, Mobb Deep, we got automation. It's this $1 million boards. You can record all these mutes, but it's still, people will call me in to do it because it was like, me, it was always my DJ instincts kicking in. You know, like with Quiet Storm's a good example because in the beginning, it was just the drums playing and him talking for like, I think that's like 16 bars or something. And
oh, you took the drums out and let that piano just kind of ride in. Okay.
Yeah. But I also like, I got on my, like, you know, I'm a creator. So I'm less an engineer and more of a producer and artist and whatever. So once they told me it was Quiet Storm, because we weren't calling it that for the longest because the bass line is White Lines from Grandmaster Flash. So yeah, he made the beat. And we called it White Lines. And honestly, the beat was for Big Noid. The beat was for Big Noid, and it sat on a tape for a while. I don't even remember how long. Like it was long enough, you know what I mean? And then I did a vocal session with P. It was like probably 3 or 4 songs in like 18 hours or something. That was the last one we did that day. So then when I did this little rough mix, that originally, you know how he goes, the real hip hop, I was gonna scratch that. He was like, bring that record. Let's do a scratch hook to this. And I was like, really? Dope. Like, you know, Mobb Deep with a scratch hook? Bet. But then that didn't really come together or whatever. And then by the next thing I knew, they was asking me to mix it and they hadn't put a hook on it. And you know what I mean? Like, and that joint was like, yeah, it was just the drums, no bass line, no piano, him talking over the drums. So then when I got there and they were saying, we call it Quiet Storm now. It's not White Lines, obvious. You know, obviously they came with a title. So I was like, oh, all right. Let's take the drums out. Let's put a voice effect on him, on his voice to make a microphone, a megaphone or telephone. And then put the storm in there. You know, the whole, the
thunder. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where's that from?
just the sound effects CD they had in the studio. We mixed it at Soundtrack, which was like where Busta did all his stuff, and Method Man, I think, did second album. It was crazy. Those were the days where you'd be in the studio and you'd be like, who's in the next room? Like, oh, Busta and Method Man. You know, like the classics was being crafted all around me. And that was the era, man, because the studios, people, you know, it's great that we can do all this stuff in the crib, and, you know, a $1 million studio is not $1 million studio, and we could have $1 million studio for like 20 racks, but there's still something to be said about going to a dope ass studio and making your album. I knew cats mostly would sleep in them joints because, man, I just want to wake up when everyone gets here again, you know what I mean? And just keep doing it. You know, cats would get the studio for days on end. And that was, you know, there's something to be said about that, you know? And when we mixed that album, the Murder Music album, like it's all analog, 100%. So once we had all the equipment, like the outboard gear, the compressors, everything set, it's like we got tape on the floor to the Mobb. Like nobody except for Havoc and P come out over this line right here. No one's walking by the equipment. No one's. I've been in with sessions with them where we lost classic beats. Someone kicking the plug out of the beat machine type. You know? Like it was real. Like we really made them songs. You know what I'm saying? We really put everything into making them. And for me, I became that go-to guy that would like, I love hip hop, so I'm getting my hourly rate. I'm good. How long you want to go, and what we trying to do? What we trying to create? Like, you know, another good situation to show you an example is with the Big Pun skits. That's all me. Like he would tell me what he wanted, and I pretty much produced the skits. Like that's me I got all the sound effects on my MP. I'm putting my hand on the MP. That's why my hands are like, I had all the sound effects. He told me how this basic script was for, like, let's say Packing the Mac at the back of the act. I don't know if you know his skits like that. But he told me the whole skit, and then we put some people in the booth so we can make it, you know, we could get a little bit of separation. And it was like doing radio. I had all the sound effects that we needed on the pads. And while they're performing the skit, I'm doing the sound effects behind them. So when you hear the gunshots, that's me on the pads. Bah, 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 bah. So for me, it wasn't like, yo, I'm producing this, man. What the hell? Do I get a point? Like, no, I wasn't thinking that at all. In fact, years later, people were like, damn, you kind of produced that shit. I'm like, I guess, but I just was doing what needed to be done as the engineer at the time. It wasn't like Pun knew how to literally craft a skit to make it sound like he was on the block. You know what I mean? I was like, yeah, we need street noise. We can't just have it like the gunshots and the car pull up. That sound like you're in the studio. They were like, let's go. That's what we're talking about. How do we create this whole environment? You know, and that it's things like that where it's like, you're not thinking about the platinum status. I knew Big Pun was out of here. Like we literally did those skits. The next day, he had to turn the album in, like for mastering.
Wow.
Like, cause that back then, you know, you had pressing plants, so dates were like, no. This is the date. If you don't have it by this date, and we have all these other things, that's out. Your skits ain't making this shit. You know what I mean? So that's also why I got the big salute, because not only did I record on the album, but I did all those skits. Like we did them all in one day. Like I think every skit on there we did in one day. It's like 22 hours, fucking Terror Squad.
Damn.
So it was like we had to hand them in the next day, or else they wasn't going to get on there. You know, and I just looked at it like, let's go, man. I work here at the studio, so I'm getting my engineer rate, whatever that is at the time, you know, $30-$40, whatever it is. So I'm good as far as the time. And we're going to just create with someone that's dope and creative, you know, the Prodigy, is Big Pun, is Wu-Tang. And like, I really brought the hip hop element to the studio at the time, like because I was working at the cutting room. And, you know, if it's from 95 to 2000, like it's probably, and it came through New York, I probably touched it as far as the songs, because they were all coming through the cutting room, and everyone was saying, if you go to the cutting room, you have to get Nastee or Duro. You know, and I remember literally tracking a record in cutting room, putting it on 2-inch, vocals, beat, whatever, walking next door to Platinum Island, which was the next, literally 676, 678, you know what I mean, on Broadway. And I'd be bringing it to Duro. Like, I literally tracked artifacts. Here's 2-inch tape. He starts mixing it. You know,
All right,
and it was.
I want to ask like 3 big questions, and then I anticipate that kind of being the end because we're like 15 minutes left.
Oh yeah. Wow.
So first big question is, given that we just had all these conversations about, you know, the old studio setups and the analog gear and all that, obviously technology has changed. What is really necessary these days now to get good recording quality? What's your go-to setup?
It really comes, if we're talking vocals, it really comes down to the microphone and the surrounding you want to put it in. I got a really old mic that I've had for forever. It's a Studio Projects mic. Back when I was first just kind of having a digital recorder and moving around a lot. I went to a guy and said I wanted a 414 AKG. And he said, well, I have to order that for you, but why don't you try this Studio Projects mic? And if you don't like it, I'll get you the 414 and you can just give it back to me. And I was like, all right, cool. It was a music store. So I went back, I went home and I still have that mic. And I recorded, when I was in Vermont, every feature we got was on that mic. And I'm talking about Raekwon, Sean Price, Malice from Clips, R.A. the Rugged Man. And I didn't even have a studio when I was up there doing my indie thing in the early 2000s. And people never even assumed that I was somewhere else. So it comes down to, with the mic, if you're talking vocals, the mic and where you place it in the room is everything. And, you know, obviously now we have technology that helps with stuff like that. The eyeball is good. The Chaotica, I think. Chaotica. And then, you know, it really comes down to what you're trying to spend when it comes to the quality, you know, because you could get some analog gear and it sounds crystal clear, beautiful, but do you really need that? It starts to be, it really depends on the goal of what you're making. You know, simple shit can be done really simply. And like, you know, if you're an artist just starting out, you can get a pretty cool setup for the crib to just get in the game of, you know, we're in a new game where it's like, no, make as many songs as you can that are good, put them up, you know? Whereas, you know, in my era of learning that shit, it was like, wow, demo. You know, you might make 3-4 different versions of a song before you take it to a real studio and make it, you know? Whereas now it's set up for us to really rock out, which I honestly love all the stuff that's come out. There's still stuff to be said about rewinding the tape and things like that, but you can get a lot with just Logic and a good mic and like what's that one my boy just got, the Scarlett interface. The stuff is made to be quick and easy now, so that makes it a little bit like you're not experimenting setting it up. You know, back in the days, it's like, why isn't it working? You know, oh, this is the wrong chord. You know, like a million things are going wrong. Whereas this stuff is usually plug it in and you're good to go. So you can spend more of the time maybe moving the mic around your room. You know, you want it where it's the least echoey so that when you raise your voice, it's, you know, that natural reverb of a square or a rectangle, whatever the hell you're in. You know, the thing with I don't know a lot about acoustics, but I know that you don't want any right angles. That's what the mastering engineers was like. These engineers that design them rooms, no right angles. So, yeah.
Okay, so then my next big question is, initially you didn't want to upload your beats to BeatStars. Neither did I, honestly. What made you change your mind?
Really what changed my mind was watching the game. At that point, I was really like, doing a lot of executive moves. So I was seeing how much the music game was changing with the internet really taking over, the streaming and all that stuff. So that made me just kind of rethink what it was. And I was honestly like a lot of people, I didn't understand. I thought type beat meant copying. You know what I mean? Like I thought it literally meant like you made the old boy beat over. Like, no, I don't, who wants that? You know what I mean? But then when I started getting educated about that part, that made me really be like, there's something to this. Because to me, I looked at right away the leasing thing as like, it's like mixtapes, right? Like somebody gets the beat from the Benjamins and 50 million people just rap to it. You know what I mean? So, because people are like, oh, so someone could have a beat and then another person could have the same beat. I'm like, what are you talking about? That doesn't matter at this point. Like that, they're going to rip your beat if they want to rap to it, you know? And that was happening to me anyway. You know what I'm saying? Like I would hear my beats and they're not online. I got jerked a few times where I sent someone beats and they turned up on the album. So I just looked at it more like from a hustler's point of view and was like, well, how many beats do I make when I sit and make beats? Well, in a weekend, I can make at least 10. And that's on like I had other stuff to do. You know what I mean? So what happened was I was thinking about, it was so crazy. I was thinking about it and I was reaching out to people to reach out to BeatStars because I didn't want to just sign up because I just didn't know what I was getting into. And I just looked at myself like, well, I got enough things that I've done in my life that if I'm going to go into this new thing, I want to know the whole 100. And it was so crazy how it happened. I don't know if you know this part. So I did a song for Joey Badass called King to a God. And it did really well, like streaming wise. And a guy hit me up in my DM saying, I love that beat. I want to hear more. And I was like, bet, give me your email. And it was J-Tech. And so then he was like, my manager's going to get in touch with you. And then it turned out it was Mike Trampy, and that's my guy from before. So it was literally, as I was thinking of, I definitely manifested it because I was thinking of it and it dropped right in my lap of like, yo, here's someone you actually already know that's working with them. And it was early too. It was right before that big hack. What was that, like 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago? It was right whenever BeatStars.
Speaking of big hacks, someone just put a dick in the chat. It didn't happen for a long time. There used to be dicks in the chat all the time. And it was for like, sorry, my girl's laughing upstairs because she can hear me. Like, I think when I first started streaming on here, because Twitch is new for me.
Yeah.
There's dicks in the chat. Shout out to the dicks in the chat. But yeah, I remember the hack. The hack was like, what, 2017, 2018? I'm trying to forget because that was a ugly month. But yeah, it was a December, I remember.
Yeah. Because I had just joined and I remember thinking like, okay, how does this work really? You know, because Mike was giving me and you know what really sealed the deal for me of wanting to do it and thinking that is that I met Dream Life in a session here in New York. And we hit it off right away. And when we were hanging out, I was like, yo, can you really like break it down for me? Like, how does it work? And then he broke it down to me in the musical sense and broke it down to me in the financial economic sense. And it made a lot of sense to me. And I was immediately on board. And after I talked to him and Mike and together, they like broke down all these things. And I was immediately telling other people like, yo, you're bugging, fam. Like those, like you always put, man, them beats ain't meant to be sitting on a hard drive. Like, get them out there for the world to at least hear. Maybe they don't buy them, but at least they'll hear them. You know, you could send your people like, yo, here's my beats, whatever. Like, I think that a big part of it for me was that like, okay, this could be a good little hustle, but I want my beats up too. Like, I make so many that it's because, you know, like I'm forever inspired to do that. No one could stop me. Like, if I didn't have nothing to do and that's all I could, just do that all day, bro. I mean, pandemic, I made like 1,000 beats. Like, you know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I really looked at it like, let them go. And my boys have all been telling me that for a long time. Like, you need to let them go, bro. You make bangers. Like, you don't stop making them. It's not like, oh man, I still got that one banger from, nah, man, put it up, man. Like, let's get going, you know? And I look at it more like an artist. When I started up there, I looked at it more like, wow, I'm kind of like an artist again, where I'm just producing and you know what I mean? Like, just making people come to my thing, whether they're listening or they buying. What's going on in the chat? They over here, Ellen?
No, there's some people shouting you out. DJ 6711 from
Oh, 6-7, my
H2O.
guy. That's my dude right there. Peace, bro.
No, I'm over here laughing because it's like everything you just said. Mike Trampy and Dream Life were kind of the people that convinced you, and like that's exactly what happened to me. It was actually Mike Trampy first, and then I met Dream Life and a couple others, but it was really Dream Life that ushered me in. So that,
and it was he really just told me about himself, like his journey, and that made me be like, you know, because me and him had hit it off just on a personal level right away, you know, because I've been in the game a long time. I could tell. I know a greedy mom. You know, I know a person doing it for the right reasons. Even if you're doing it for money, that don't even matter to me. Sorry, my incense is getting all over the place. That don't even matter to me. Like, if you're about money and music, that's fine. But be about that shit. Say that. You know what I mean? Like, that's my problem with some of the game is that it's like, bro, if you're just doing this to get money or some, you know, whatever your thing is besides art, just let it be known. Be true to that, because I'll respect that too. I know people that was rapping to get millions of dollars. They wasn't rapping for no art, but respected the art enough to know. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's why that millions came. You know, we're in a game. We're in a game now. It's like $1 million. That's nothing to some of this game now. You know. It's like back in the days, like Magic Johnson signed $1 million deal. They're like, oh my God, they gave him $1 million. Like they're giving these guys $100 million, you know? So yeah, I think that I keep going off the topic, but
no,
yeah,
okay. So then last question, because we only have 4. Obviously, shout out to Dream Life, but we only have 4 minutes.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's my guy.
So this is a big question though, because it encompasses a lot of what went down in your life. We're gonna have to schedule part 2 of this. Honestly, when we were talking, you told me that you almost quit music completely before Pro Era came along. Obviously, Pro Era was transformative in your life and career. Tell me what was happening then, and how did you link with Pro Era, and how did that resolve everything? Because clearly you're still making music.
Yeah, it wasn't quitting the music as much as it was quitting like the stupid ass games and industry shit. Really, what happened was like I was doing the music and I was working on this cartoon. I was doing my own independent music up in Vermont, and I had made this cartoon that was going along with it, and the cartoon was getting me places, like, you know what I mean? Like, it was like a hip hop cartoon that was like, what do you mean Vermont? They like hip hop in Vermont, you know what I mean? Like, so at that point, I wasn't mixing, I wasn't engineering for nobody. I was an independent artist only, and I wasn't playing no games. I wasn't looking for no deals. I was independent or get out of here. You know what I'm saying? And I really was not. I was back in New York at the time. I was going hard with the cartoon. I was up at VH1 with you know, these guys that really like understood it and wanted to really help me get it. We got it all the way to some really high meetings, and then in one meeting it got deaded. And we're talking like 2 years of working on this cartoon, not really doing music as much as just, I mean, I was doing it because I could still pull like some cool stuff out that I did. Like I did some Craig G, Styles P records, and like, you know what I mean? Like produced. But for the most part, I was focused on that cartoon, and I was really like later for the music industry. And not like, you know, when you say quit music, it gets like, it's like dramatic, but it was more like, I'm not playing y'all games no more. And it was really, part of it was the music itself. You know what I'm saying? I was in New York hearing people rap like they was from New Orleans. You know what I mean? And like, yo, you from, nah, man. So that had me like, man, this game, all this stuff, man, I'm just do what I do. And then when that cartoon got shot down, And in the TV world, it's different than when you're trying to do something in music. When it got shot down, it got shot down. Like the other doors closed type beats. You know what I'm saying? And the same week that happened, I had been telling my man Static Selector, yo, if Joey Badass and Pro Era need me to do something for them, whatever it is, I'm down. And I told him like that maybe about 6 months before the cartoon got shot down. And in the same week, it was a crazy week. Like that was a week of like, you know, with the cartoon, and then the call came in the middle of the night, like get over here not in the middle of the night, but get over here in the middle of the night. You know what I mean? What we doing? Mixing Joey's album. So, because what it was, I was in the middle of I was helping my man with a 3-day move. My man's a moving company. And there's a little extra bread and help him, you know what I mean? So, and I was like getting my mind off of like getting shot down and seeing the other doors closed, because it was like a week of like, well, what about so-and-so? Nah, they're not taking our call again. They're not responding. It was one of them like, man, maybe I should just go be a farmer. You know what I mean? Like maybe I should just go back to the forest. I'm a city boy, so to me the forest is like 5 minutes outside the city. But so I was helping this dude move, and on the second day of the move, I'm talking about the worst move you ever heard of, like moving like old newspapers from Midtown Manhattan to upstate New York, like boxes and boxes of something that should be getting thrown in the garbage. You know what I mean? And the second day, I'm literally coming home 11 o'clock at night, I'm feed her and take it, you know, like just whooped. And there's the phone ringing, boom, Static. Yo, get over here at midnight. We're going to start mixing Joey's album. And I went that night. It was the first time I met Joey. I mean, I hadn't met him before, but not in that capacity of like, we're going to work. And then we just clicked immediately, like within like 5 seconds, me and Joey. And then his team was, you know, we were all just gelled right away, because they quickly saw that like, yeah, I'm older than y'all, but that don't mean shit, because I still have the fire in me to make some dope ass music and dope ass things to go with it. So that was the motivation behind it. And then that kind of brought me back into the music game. Like I was always doing music, like don't ever get it twisted. I'll never not make beats. But for that one moment, which is like, you know, I say it's a moment because it is like a 2-year period from like, I would say 2010 to 2012, you know, going into 2013, 2014, it was like, damn, man. And then I was just going hard. I thought that cartoon was going to take me to a new place of, I quickly learned that they didn't care about these platinum records in the TV game. You know what I mean? Like those TV executive producers was like, he did what? Who cares? I don't have anything to do with this. You know, meanwhile, I was looking at like, I'm not saying it for clout. I'm saying it for like, this is why this cartoon's going to work. You know, so it was a lot of soul searching to go back in the game. And I wanted to work with Joey, and the whole cinematic thing was blowing up and it was the right fit. So I went there, and then I eventually, I think I worked at Cinematic maybe about 1.5 years. And then when Joey came back from tour, he hired me just as a Pro Era. I started as kind of as A&R for his label, and then turned into the GM, just trying to get everybody off the ground, you know, and yeah, man, just a lot of work. It was a lot of artists, a lot of good music. And that's really what I'm about, man. If it's not the good music, it's kind of, I don't know. It's hard for me to just go get a check, even if it's a music check. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, appreciate that. I know we're running way beyond what we agreed on. So let me be respectful.
It's all good. It's all good. I blocked out.
We still got people tuned in. No, so I'm gonna message you later, and we can reschedule this for like late fall and do a part 2, because I have I'm typing follow-up questions. Appreciate that. How can people follow you? I know Nastee.
At Nastee Loves You. That's everything. That's all my socials. Oh, and this. What am I looking at? Oh, Nastee Loves You. Yeah, at Nastee Loves You. Everything's at Nastee Loves You. That's me. YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. Not really on Twitch like that. I like Twitch though.
I mean, you're on Twitch right now, technically.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, you know, I'm salute. Yeah, so I'm doing a lot of things right now with we're trying to make a mature label, mature content, you know. You ain't gotta be an old man to be on a label, but you gotta have some knowledge in your head to even come in our cipher. So that's the shirt I got on. It's my brother Conflict. We're out here, man. Hip hop is actually making this a rush forward, and the mainstream will never get on board with that because they don't want that. They don't want anybody thinking, but it's here and it's time. You know, we see it in the world, and we definitely see it with hip hop.